Welcome to Serling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Serling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
Most of us can probably recall a scenario when they saw someone very good in their individual contributor role get promoted into a manager or a leader role because they were just that good, no contest. Yet the consequence of that promotion is that they were just not that good at relationship building, motivation, and leading teams. Here with us today is Jeff Harris, Pasco County Organizational Performance Advisor, Serling Master Examiner, a seasoned manager with roots in W. Edwards Deming and Total Quality Management, with tenure in the Quality Assurance Department for the Fighter Jet Squadron on the USS John F. Kennedy and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Welcome to Visionary Voices, Jeff. I understand that you have recently led an initiative within Pasco County to introduce a culture of leadership development and growth. And this initiative was capable of ensuring that those hired or promoted into either emerging leader or leader roles are skilled appropriately to support others. We'd like to learn a little bit more about this. Can you tell us about your efforts here?
Sure. Thank you, Laura, for having me. And it's an honor to be a part of it. I've just listening to all the interviews that you and Bob have done with respective thought leaders in their respective fields. I'm happy to contribute just a little bit I can today. We started actually in 2012, so we've been at it for quite some time. We recently finished an analysis of our leadership development program, which has been very successful. We looked across the state of Florida at other local governments. The emerging leader program that we currently have is very, very effective. It's a long program. It includes a boot camp portion where it's intensive learning for a week. There's a mentorship program. There's a stretch project that they're required to do. What we really wanted to do, to your point, was really look at managerial program beyond emerging leader. We wanted to see how do we continue to be a culture of lifelong learning throughout the employee life cycle, from the day they're hired to the day they retire, all the way through that spectrum. So that will include supervisory program, manager program, all the way through senior leader. Our current county administrator, Mike Harbala, believes that, when you quit learning, you quit leading. And so there's always something, particularly now in the world of VUCA. I'm sure you've heard the term VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Things happen in the business world at a much faster pace than they ever have before. And so leaders need to recognize that and be able to manage their teams and lead their teams in a world where things are moving at such a rapid rate.
What other reasons led you to this revamping of the leadership development process that you've introduced?
Yeah, really. But, on a macro level, our county administrator, said, what is our culture? Who do we want to be? And the one of the answers to that was we want to be an organization of leaders. We want everyone in the organization, every minute of every hour of every day, and every message that they send to have the leadership qualities that will help not only lead them but lead their teams to higher performance. And one of the more acute impetus for us doing this was we had an assessment done, an organizational evaluation done, where we started to look at the leadership and development systems and how do we tie those outcomes to key business results, right? And if you're familiar with the Kirkpatrick model, the level 4 of that model is the return on the investment. So how do we determine what that return on investment really is? With an organization like a local government, we have 57 lines of business. And so it's very difficult to say, it'd be a lot easier if we were just looking at, top line, bottom line revenue, right? We're looking at performance across a wide array of business initiatives. We believe that without strong leadership, the organization can falter in some of these places. So we want to maintain that culture of continuous learning from soup to nuts. And so one of the other things that we're recommending is that, we have a tiered learning program. So even beyond that emerging leader program, how do we build on those attributes that they're learning in that emerging leader program as they become a supervisor, as they become a manager? I alluded to the exceptional rate of promotions for people graduating from that emerging leader program. How do we continue to learn and build on those learnings? And then how are we applying those learnings in the workforce, right? How do we ensure that they're learning these things over the course of their career? And one of the ways that we're looking to do that is to look at our performance measures, right? At the end of the year, we'll look at those performance measures, and we believe that folks that are able to hone these leadership attributes will be able to lead their teams, have more engaged teams, and the higher their engagement is, the better their results will be. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to look for, is to have an organization full of leaders that can really foster higher employee engagement, which then will in turn lead to, our mission is to serve our community, to create a better future. Our performance is about public service. Our performance is measured by how well we serve our public. We aim to do that every single day, and we measure that not just every day, but we look at some macro measures at the end of the year to make sure that we're achieving that mission.
Can you give us an idea of the type of curricula that makes up this leadership training and how it may evolve over an individual's career with Pasco County? Would also like to touch on as well a complexity that you referenced when we initially started talking about this topic prior to this episode. I think you cited 57 different organizations comprise Pasco County. So in this curricula, how do you accommodate for the difference in organizational or these 57 team-based needs?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about leadership development is that those principles span those lines of business. I mean, it doesn't matter that if you're managing a group that's part of our public transportation group, and it doesn't matter if you're part of our engineering group. Leadership principles are leadership principles, and so it's beyond the technical stuff where you would go and learn something about designing a water treatment plant, for example. Leadership principles are leadership principles. For example, in emerging leader, there's, we do some personality typing so you can better understand what kinds of personalities may fit better on a team. We do things like effective communication. I heard one of your other guests talk about, Lou Holtz said that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you ought to be listening twice as much as you're speaking, right? So active listening is part of effective communication. So and we aim to build on those things. So where emerging leader, you may get a taste of that. As you move into the supervisory level, you'll get more of that. For our supervisors, we're now recommending that we teach Serling, like an introduction to the Serling framework, right? Malcolm Baldrige framework. And as you move into the more manager role, you may be looking at a Serling 201, right? So you're building on the knowledge that you learned in the 101 class. And then as you get into more the executive senior leadership team and the executive level, maybe that looks more like the Serling Fellows program, right? Where you're really enhancing that learning over time. We think that the best way to really embed that learning in folks is to, as you finish a curriculum, you'll go and apply that learning in the workforce. And there'll have to be some mechanism by which we measure, are you applying that learning? And then as you move through the leadership development program into senior leadership roles or executive roles, you continue to build on that knowledge and continue to apply that learning, right? One of the shortcomings that a lot of organizations face as we did interviews was that there is no way to determine whether or not that learning is applied. They go to the class, complete a survey, have, that level 1 and level 2 of the Kirkpatrick model. But the level 3, a lot of organizations don't have their arms around. And certainly level 4 is much more difficult because there's so many variables that go into that, determining what your ROI is on something like that. I worked very closely with Dr. Sherry Rainey of Rainey Leadership Learning, and she's been in this world for some time. Behavioral science and brain-based science and how your brain works and how it operates. It's really critical that you apply that learning in the workforce when you go back to your functional work group, apply that learning, right? So you're able to embed that knowledge and embed that capability moving forward. And then when you go back for the next set of curricula, you build on what you've already learned and what you've already applied in the workforce.
What are your success rates? How do you know that this program is making a difference? Do you get feedback from the folks that go through the program?
We do get feedback. The feedback from the Emerging Leader Program is extraordinary. Not just from those folks that are attending, that go through the program, but from their supervisors and managers of those people that went through the training. And without exception, it's perceived as a great program, which is why we intend to adopt that model. The Emerging Leader is a cohort program where you go through with a class, and you go through all the boot camp together, you go through the mentorship program together, you do the stretch project as a group, very much like CPM, right? CPM, another very successful program, Certified Public Manager program from Florida State. Those cohort programs are very, very effective because not only do you get the peer learning from your cohorts, but there's some inherent accountability that you pull your weight for the project, that you pull your weight from class, right? So there's some inherent accountability in that too. So what we aim to do is just take what's already being successful, what's already been deemed successful with the Emerging Leader Program to the Supervisor Program and the Manager Program. The model works. It's been, survey respondents overwhelmingly are positive about the program. So we want to just adopt that same cohort operation and apply it to those others. But it really is, again, the critical finding was that we need to apply those learnings in the workforce. When folks get back to their functional work unit, they need to apply that. What we're recommending is some mechanism on the back end, but once they get back into the workforce, hey, these are the principles that you've learned. This was the expectation of classroom learning. How are we now going to apply that when you get back to your work unit? That's the gap that we've seen in the program. But very like you alluded to something in one of your other podcasts, good to great. That's what we're looking to do with this program. Our training manager, Ben Deal, has done a yeoman's job. He's done a wonderful job creating this, really from scratch. Didn't have a lot of opportunities to mimic other programs because he started it so long ago. And it's been so successful over time that I believe personally it's something that can be mimicked by other local governments across the state as a very effective, particularly emerging leader program.
What do you think your program does differently than other programs? Why would I want to adopt yours over any other ones that are out there?
I think it's the dedication of the people that are involved, right? There's real ownership from all the facilitators, starting at the top of the training and development manager. Even beyond that, the director of our department has really empowered Ben Deal to create this program. And as cliche as it sounds, we want to have an organization of continuous improvement, continually look at how can we change it? How must we change it to address the business needs that we see in today's world? In 2012, when the program started, there was no remote work. There was no hybrid work. There wasn't, social media is so much bigger now than it was then. And so how do we harness all of those things like now, right? Artificial intelligence. How are we harnessing artificial intelligence? And what do we need to be training our people to do so that we stay competitive in a marketplace? I hear oftentimes that, we're a local government, so we're really not competing. We are competing for talent every single day, right? We're competing for engineers. We're competing for accountants. As a strength organizationally, our people say the opportunity to develop professionally is something that keeps me here, right? So if you have an opportunity to develop and really, sharpen the saw and really, enhance your leadership skills, we believe that will be a feather in our cap and it'll enable us to recruit better talent. Having an opportunity for folks to enhance their leadership skills is something that people will look at as in their consideration coming to work here.
Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share in regard to this leadership program and the work you've done to support it?
One of the arguments that you hear is, what if we put all this effort into somebody and they leave the organization? Quote by Henry Ford: "The only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training and having them stay." If Pasco County is looking in the mirror and we say, who are we? Who do we want to be? We want to be an organization that's creating more leaders. Our former county administrator would make our team leaders read a leadership book and come and report out on what they learned. And I would always tell my boss, instead of reading all of that, you can read the 42 pages of the Serling Handbook and start asking yourself questions about, how do we lead? How do we do that? What is our mechanism by which we lead our people? When you stop learning, you stop leading. And when you stop learning how to lead, you're going to lose your teams. And that's, beyond recruiting new talent, we want to be able to retain the talent that we have too. In a nutshell, I really believe that it's probably one of the more important things that any organization can do. In fact, I read a survey by global research and advisory firm Gartner that said 60% of HR executives say they'll focus on cultivating leader and manager effectiveness for their companies in 2024. So we're not in this by ourselves. And so if we're competing with everybody else, 60% of those other organizations are out there doing the same thing. So we really do want to be the tip of the spear when it comes to leadership and leadership development. And we believe that will not just improve our engagement and our performance over time, but enhance people's lives and enhance our own employees' lives and make them better individuals. And if they leave to go to another organization, when they get there, we want their teams to look at them and say, wow, this is a good leader. And you learn those attributes at Pasco County.
I really like the idea too that your program doesn't just focus on new leaders, emerging leaders. It's something that evolves and grows with the leader as they continue on their career path. I also believe leadership is not a single sport. It's a team sport, and it's not just about the soft skills that make a leader, but it's about the ability to work with other leaders to focus a single team in a single direction or in multiple directions aligned to the most important strategic priorities or objectives that need to be addressed, right? If you can have a group of leaders, but if they're all leading in different directions, where does that get an organization?
Yeah, they all need to be pulling in the same direction, right? Leadership expresses the personality of the individual. That sounds very simple, but it's really complex. And the best leaders can change their leadership style depending on the situation. If we have a fire chief that is going into a burning building, that calls for a different leadership style than does collaborating and getting new ideas on how to fight that fire. You're not being very diplomatic in that scenario, right? You have to make a call and you have to execute a plan to put the fire out. You can't declare yourself a good leader, right? That's like saying that you're very smart or you're very good looking. That's not for you to decide, right? You being a good leader is decided upon by those that you lead. You had a guest earlier that talked about, the best salesperson, and they make that the best salesperson, they make them the manager, make them the leader, and they're not selling anymore, right? So leadership is a skill. Leadership is a muscle that has to be developed and exercised. And the more it's exercised, the better you're at it. I worked for the engineering division for a long time with professional engineers, some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. But oftentimes they'll take the most senior engineer and make him the leader. And that's a different skill, right? So while leadership sounds easy, it's not. And so when they talk about soft skills, they're not soft, they're hard oftentimes. To develop an organization full of leaders can only enhance your performance over time. It only enhances your engagement. And, I've said before that, culture begets engagement and engagement begets performance. And it has to happen on that continuum. You can't skip a step, right? And so when we say we want to have a culture of leadership, that then we believe will lead to higher engagement, and that higher engagement will then lead to higher performance.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Learned a bit. We'll have to have you back and see how your leadership development program is doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Serling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Serling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.